Hi everyone. I would say it's nice to see you all, but you are just seeing me. I can't see you, but I can see you in the comments. Hi Sylvia, Janice, Sean. Nice to see you and everyone else. Tell me where we're calling in for text. We're viewing in from today. Where in the world are you? I love finding out where you are because I find it so interesting, just how similar we are in the things that we go through and how you're not alone in what feels so alone. And then you find out, oh, there's other people going through the same thing. So if you want to tell me where you are as we get started and wait for a few more people to come on. Love my early birds. Um, yeah, it's so much of what we go through. I mean, I remember feeling this way. I mean, it just felt like I was the only one on the planet who knew what it was like to experience what I was experiencing, and then I would find other women who were going through such similar things, and then of course, coaching and connecting with all of you has really just brought that home. At wow, like how alike we are, no matter where we are, and how different we think we might be, or our cultures, or our places that we're at, or yeah, we have more similar things, more in common than we do not in common. So nice to see Canada and South Africa and South Dakota, the US. Yeah. And I'm hoping this time, the first time I wanted to make sure I could get Australia often gets left out with the time zones. There, Sydney, Australia even made it. Yeah, because I was checking different time zones. I've really gotten to know this because before I'm always cognizant of what time is it that I've got my coaching sessions scheduled in your time zone. So I've gotten to know time zones better than I could have ever learned it in school because yeah, so it's just so interesting finding out. And Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, different parts of Asia are the hardest to schedule. I do some really interesting times there, and especially when we have daylight savings, and then all of a sudden daylight savings change. I don't know if someone from Hong Kong is on here, but I had a new client, and she was from Hong Kong, and poor thing, she was staying up till midnight to do calls with me when she was just scheduling them for my calendar. And anyway, so I said, let's try and find a time that's not on my public calendar. So I had done 8 a.m. my time, which was like I think it was 11 o'clock her time. And I thought, okay, that's about the latest I can get her to stay up, because I think she was scheduling like 1 a.m. I thought, you can't have calls with me at 1 a.m. You're not going to get nearly as much out of this. So, and then the daylight savings came into effect. We had this nice little time, 8 a.m. And so that I would start the day then and do everything else, anything. I just get up earlier that day and do all my other household stuff. Anyway, time, so this worked well for months, and then daylight savings came here, and all of a sudden my 8 a.m. was a 7 a.m. and it was like, oh, because they didn't do the daylight savings. So every once in a while that happens, but I'm happy to accommodate you. So this time I think actually worked better because I know Austria and Germany, I know we're at I think we're at 10 or 11, which is a little on the late side, but the UK, I think you're at 8 or 9. I think you're at 9 in the UK, 8 hours. Yeah, you're 8 hours ahead. So you're like 9 o'clock. And then Australia, I looked and I was pleased to see that I think you're at 8 a.m. So this might actually be a better time. We're a little late in parts of Europe and South Africa. Thanks for staying up with me. And then other parts in Australia and other places, you're just starting your day. So hopefully this will be a sweet spot that does well. Hi from Leslie from BC, Canada. That's where I'm from. Vancouver and Ucluelet and Port Coquitlam and Powell River, all my spots over there. And Vermont. Oh, I love Vermont. I actually have cousins who I have not seen since we were little in Vermont. And my husband's been to Vermont on business trips, but I haven't yet been over. But one of these days, yeah, Vermont, it sounds beautiful up over there. We always say we're going to try and get over there with the leaves and everything. Anyway, can you tell geography is like my social studies was like my favorite subject. Anyway, I love meeting people from different parts and hearing where you're from. So feel free to type that in the chat as we go along. How is everybody today? How are you feeling? Are you feeling good? Are you feeling down? Are you feeling depressed? Or how are we feeling? How's everybody? Janice, I might have known. No, I didn't know you. I moved. I wasn't there, but small world. Very small world. Well, however you're feeling, let's get started. I think we've got more people who are going to be joining us. Yeah, I figure this probably isn't a high point. February now. I mean, in parts of, I know the other parts of the world that are in their summertime, the sunshine always helps. But for those of us who are have had a long winter, really long winter, we're waiting for the springtime. So yeah, anxious and down, depressed, expectant. Good. Expect great things because we have got a lot to talk about. I loved your questions. I loved reading, getting to know you, hearing where you're coming from and what you're going through. And yeah, so, okay, well, let's get started. Thank you so much, everyone, for sending in your stories and your questions and and just for being so real and giving me as much detail. I can get a lot from you just from your words, and I also get a lot from when you don't say too much too. There's often a lot that jumps out there. So thank you. This is all because of you guys being here. I'm happy to do this because this is a part I absolutely love. Just speaking to you and reaching you and just helping you make sense of behaviors that don't make sense. I've seen probably everything and either through my own experiences and then through the experiences that you've all invited me in to share with you and what you've shared with me and the men I've met through you and the experience I feel like I've had through you, with you, walking through life with you. So thanks for, being here and contributing this so that I can really see you and get you some help and get you some answers that you've been looking for that are hard to come by and very confusing a lot of times. And from California and Adelaide, yes, I'm glad everyone could be here in these time zones. So I think we hit something good here. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to answer Kia. Kia, are you here? If you're not, I'll probably you'll catch up on the replay and I'll hear from you. You were in your car or walking or doing something listening. So you'll get your answer at some point. But Kia, I'm so glad you wrote in. Kia wrote to me and said, "Hi, Jane. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for this opportunity to have a question answered. Not sure what to ask. I have so many questions. I currently rekindled with an old boyfriend from 30 years ago. We're already living together after 5 months of off and on seeing each other since moving in we were to be exclusive. After a December of trials and tribulations, but all in all, it was great. January, however, threw me off a bit. My person just seemed to drift, and last week he told me he wasn't happy, that I can't force it, that I'm not in control of him. I have never tried to control him. I don't want to by any means. I'm scared he's saying those things because another girl has contacted him. I realize living with someone else so fast can cause issues, but I'm scared I'm going to lose this man I've fallen in love with again. I'm sorry, I'm not normally so insecure. That's what scares me. So I guess my question is, will we continue to grow together as time goes on? Does he have good feelings for me? And is he being faithful to me? Thank you, Kia. Okay, Kia, with the evolution of Facebook, I talked to so many women who've reconnected with their guy from years ago And it doesn't seem to matter how long it is or where this happened or what, but there's a lot of hope and excitement on both parts. And then the reality check, it doesn't quite work out that way. Now, one good thing, there is a definite pattern when you reconnect with someone from your past. There is a pattern that is more than a coincidence, because it has happened a lot, where it's the next guy after the guy you reconnect with that's the right one. I've had more women get married, partner up, move in, whatever their goal was, with the guy after the guy they connect with. Usually they connect with me because they're trying to figure out what's going on with the guy from the past. And then we go all through that, and they see things, and that guy is usually the impetus for real shift and change, and something happens. So anyway, that's just to give you some hope if this guy isn't working out, or if you've got a situation like that where you have reconnected with someone and it hasn't gone well. The interesting odds, at least in my books, are that you're more likely to meet the right one, or someone who's a better match for you after going through that, because there's a lot in there. I mean, there's fantasy, there's so much with connecting with someone from the past, because they represent who you were and what your life was then, and your dreams and your hopes. And to have someone all of a sudden who sees you so clearly, in a way, because they see you like from your past and from a time in your life when everything was just easy and free and happy-go-lucky, and just you felt like the world was your oyster, and just so many feelings. And so it's like you go through that exercise, and it's such a wake-up call about what is real, what is fantasy, and the realities of how much people actually change throughout the years, and how much you have changed. So it's interesting to see how just how that pattern plays out. Now, to get to your question, living together after 5 months, probably a little early, because there were obviously some things to iron out, some things to sort out in terms of seeing each other, getting to know each other in different seasons, and figuring out who you were. Now, again, that makes sense. It kind of plays into you knew each other so well. You have all these memories, so you're probably super excited, which I get, of course. And so you probably thought, and he probably gave you every reason to believe everything was good and everything was going to be fine. I want to say about when he's saying you're not in control of him. So he is picking up on that. That is a big part of men's programming. Men have been programmed that we are controlling. They will see almost anything we do as controlling. That is such a big part of their programming. So you just have to know you don't need to get defensive. There really isn't anything you can say to defend whether or not he sees you as controlling. So there really isn't anything that you can, you can't convince him you're not. You're going to give him examples. You're going to ask him for examples. He's going to tell you things, and you're going to say, that's not controlling. Or you're going to say, well, that was because of this. And to you, it's not going to feel like you've tried to control him. So I just want to affirm and support that and confirm for you. I'm sure you never intentionally tried to control him, but he will see that because he's already got this programming, this conditioning that says women are controlling. And then anything you do, he is going to see as it fits into that category. So the concern I have is, why did you jump to another? You're concerned another girl has contacted him. You're scared that there's someone else. So, and you're insecure. So I agree. That would be what would scare me. If someone I was talking to someone new yesterday, and she specifically was saying that she felt, what was her word for it? She felt, it wasn't insecure as much, but it was along those, she felt anxious. She felt, anyway, I forget what her word was right now, but she specifically was saying that it was something that she felt, basically she didn't feel like herself. She felt something different than her usual self. And so when that happens, that's what I pay really close attention to, because if something is triggering you to feel that way, it's either a trigger that is making you feel like there is something in your past that you have experienced this before, and usually you're the best person to see whether or not there really is something there. So anytime that you are feeling that, it's either him or it's a situation, it's a dynamic that's created because of you and him, and either way there's something there. So I'm not saying there's another girl. I'm not saying that I'm not saying he's cheating on you or that he's interested in someone else. I mean, you did mention the exclusive piece, which makes it sound like you're concerned about the exclusion. You want to be exclusive and you're concerned about that. So there's something there. So when you say, well, we continue to grow together as time goes on, does he have good feelings for me? And is he being faithful to me? Well, that is what scares me too, because you will continue to grow together as time goes on if the two of you are open and honest with each other, if you have something real here where you can grow together as time goes on. It is a two-way street. You cannot be the only one who's concerned about, are we growing together? You can't be the only one who's worried that there's a problem. So does he have good feelings for me? And is he being faithful to me? Well, there is a problem here that you guys are having conflict, and he's saying you're not in control of him. So he's feeling, obviously, he's feeling like you're either, I hate to say smothering him, but he's feeling like you are controlling something here, that he is feeling out of control. Some reason he is feeling that, again, programming, and then there's something else that is unique to him that is triggering him. So we have to figure out a way for you not to be scared, and so that you can feel empowered. And if it is not with him, then if you're not able to feel back to your normal, secure self, if it is being with him that makes you feel so insecure and scares you, this is not going to get any better unless you can get to a place with him where you can have open communication with him, where you can relax, and where you can just enjoy getting to know him better after these years that you haven't known him. It's only been 7 months now. So what I would do is I would try to just live your life while you're living with him and see if anything changes. And what I mean by live your life, I would mean is stop putting all your eggs into one basket with him. Stop focusing on all these things. Is there someone else? I mean, you need information. If you have real reason to believe that there is someone else, then look for evidence of that. Because if you really do think that, I don't want you just confronting him without knowing something here, because that doesn't go well. He says, no, I'm not. And you're left with, but I think you are. I have this feeling you are. So you need to actually to have evidence or proof of that before you actually honestly say, look. And the important thing is not to accuse him of something. The important thing to say is, how are you feeling? So you can say, I have this feeling. It seems to me that that this is too much, that we moved in too fast. This is too close. This is too, we moved forward without thinking this through. It seems like when you say that I'm trying to control you, or that I'm in control of you, you're feeling a loss of freedom, a loss of space. So I don't want to be in something. I don't want to move too fast into this. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I really care about you. I'd really like to see where we could go together here. I'd really like to see what can happen here. But if we've jumped in too quickly, I don't want to throw away what we could be just because we've jumped into this too quickly, just because we're going too fast. So do you see what I mean? Where it's the tone, it's the energy of that type of conversation. It's not a conversation where you come from this place of insecurity and you say, I know you're seeing someone else, or I get the feeling you're seeing someone else, or you're seeing something where it's all accusatory. The tone of this is, I care about you and I care about us. And I like to think that the two of us could actually be something. And so I don't want to jeopardize what we may have by jumping in too soon. And so if you're feeling that you don't have as much control over your life, if you're feeling that I am controlling what you do, or if you're feeling these feelings, then maybe we should back up a little bit. Let's maybe figure out, like, what does that look like? So one is a tone of you coming from a place where you're powerful too. You're like equals here. And that's why he talks so much about power and choosing and being equals, because that is so important, that you have the tone, the energy, everything that comes through is because you're here with him. You have moved in with him because you recognize that there's something here and you would like to see where this might lead. You would like to see what the potential this thing might have realistically. And so I would just take a step back and focus on, while you're still here living together, figuring out how to get you back in the midst of that situation so that it becomes so much easier to communicate with him, where that communication is called for, to where you are able to see things not as a scared, the little girl in you that's being triggered, but instead as a grown adult woman who is his equal, where you can look at the situation, you can address it, you can face it head on, not in a scared, lashing out way, not in an accusatory way, but in a way that has you standing in your own power, recognizing, I don't want to move forward with this if if this is just going to feel like I'm controlling and you're going to feel this way even though I don't, and this is how we're going to be. So the key here, how do we get you back? How do we get you feeling more secure? And so I don't think you have to do anything drastic. I think right now what you can focus on is just, how do I feel like an equal again within the relationship? So does that mean I need to detach a little bit? Do I need to remember I've got a life over here? Do I need to do more with other people who make me feel good, who make me feel like an equal? Do I need to focus on that rather than focusing so much on him? But that really is the key, because you will know what to do with him. And this goes for every situation. You will always know what to do with a guy when you focus on you, when you shift the focus to building yourself up and strengthening the relationships and the things that you do that make you feel good about yourself. Feeling insecure, continuing to feel insecure in a situation tells you need to do something different. Feeling scared tells you need to do something different. It is not necessarily the drastic pull out, I need to end this, I need to be done. It can be, I need to work on myself so that then, and not work on it, it's such a cliche, but I need to go places with people, become involved with things and people that make me feel good about myself. That is essentially all the work you need to do about yourself. If you're with people who are seeing you, you're going to see more of yourself. If you are with people who validate you, who make you feel good, if you're doing things that make you feel accomplished, that make you feel you have something to offer, that you're worthwhile, you are going to have all of those things happen when you're working on yourself. But you're not working on yourself. You're living a life that is true to yourself and in touch with the authentic version of you. And so that is how you decide in everything what to do with a guy. You focus on you, and then you figure out, what can I live with? What is going on here? You see it much more objectively when you are feeling good about yourself. Okay, so that's my long answer, Kia, to that and to some other things there. Okay. Along those same lines, Leslie, are you here? Did we get to meet you? Leslie, is that There's one Leslie on here. I don't know if it's the same Leslie, but okay. Well, if that's you, or if you get this later, here is your question. I'll read it for everyone. Hi, Jane. Here's my question. I understand intellectually that I need to love myself, honor myself, know my own worth, etc. Easier said than done. Yes, so much easier said than done. I can say positive affirmations until I'm blue in the face with no lasting change. What are some tangible, effective ways to break these patterns of settling for less while always hoping for more? Okay. Yeah. And I think okay, who can't relate? Or actually, let me rephrase. Who can relate? Just say yes. Who can relate to how we can say positive affirmations until we're blue in the face and they never get all the way through? Who can say yes to that? I mean, honestly, that is just something that is just so akin to us. That just runs so deep. So first of all, those positive affirmations, they're awesome. Positive affirmations are great, but they have to become a habit. And you have to put these on Post-it notes or on plaques or by, or whatever, have photos, pictures, art. You have to have these. You have to be immersed in these. You have to have these where everywhere you look, on your phone, everywhere. You need to have those so that you can be so clear that this is your reality. This is who you are. This is not just some cliche. You have to make these things personal to you. And so having these everywhere you look and everywhere you are, it helps. Definitely helps. There's the whole habit thing. It takes, at least 3 weeks to form a habit. So you have to see these things and you have to repeat these. You have to say them out loud. And they can become much more real, much more prevalent, much more real. But how do they actually come into play where they actually help us make changes? So I'm going to tell you the number one way that I know how to do that, that I have seen success in people who feel exactly the same way. You're not alone on this one. But the number one way is to do things that give you the examples you've never had of all of those things that the affirmations are trying to get through your head. Okay. So basically, these are words. They are not actions. And so the difficult thing with this is they are, we don't have a model for this. Okay. We have no model for being loved unconditionally, for being treated well, for this whole idea of settling for less while always hoping for more. So settling, we don't have a model for not settling. We don't have a model for what being loved to our inner core, being loved, being treated well. We don't have models for that. So the way to make these positive affirmations come to life is to go make them real. And if you can't do that with a man, like if so much of this is tied up with a man, then what is so important to do is to change this with real live actions. So because you're not going to have a say. I mean, the whole point is you want to meet someone who gives you what you're looking for, who makes you feel like finally you're not settling, who gives you more. But when all of your patterns speak to, and every one of your relationships you've had, and then back to family of origin stuff where it's just all a continuation. It is so easy to look at that and just feel absolutely the exact opposite of those affirmations. So it is really important that you have experiences, that you have friendships with people in your life that contradict the norms that you've had. So, and the things that you have embraced or just accepted as this is my normal. This is all I'm going to get. This is all I've got. So you need friends who care about you, who love you, who see you. if your current set of friends aren't doing that for you, go somewhere, be involved, become involved in some things where you have people who actually see you and like you and are looking for exactly who you are. Okay, so that's the goal here, is to find proof from situations that are not a guy that you are everything that those positive affirmations are saying about you, but you do not yet have proof of. Because what you're doing, I mean, what we're doing when we look for this guy to be our be the guy who makes us feel worthy, makes us feel like we finally have broken that pattern, we finally met the right guy. So what is so important with that is that we need experiences that say the same thing. We need people that say the same thing. We need proof in the other direction that tells us we're lovable, we're worthy. We're not basing our worth on whether some guy who's some subjective guy. Maybe there's been, a slew of these men. Maybe every man you've ever been with, maybe every boy, beginning when you were younger and all the way up to now, maybe you have never ever found what you've been looking for, and all of them have been the same. But that doesn't mean 10, 20 guys have all been the unanimous judgment on your worthiness, right? Because look at how many people there are in the world, and how many, I mean, that's just like a drop in the bucket. I mean, that is so few compared to how many. So you just need to get your proof from other places. So you have to find, so instead of, and I do know this, I do know that breaking a habit and breaking patterns is next to impossible. But I know what is absolutely possible is making a new habit, making new patterns. So when you look at how do I break these patterns, you break them by making new patterns, by making new habits. And so you go and find the proof that you are looking for, because you're looking for proof from a guy that you matter. You're looking for proof that you can offer to society or your family or whoever the people are that you're trying so hard to convince, so that they can accept you, and you can feel accepted, and you can feel wanted, and you can feel part of the group that's lovable. The only way to change that is to make new habits, make a new pattern where your proof is not dependent on one mere mortal human guy who is so imperfect himself, and instead get that proof by doing your own things, by doing the things that you need to do, by doing the things that you think are so hard to do unless you've got some guy to do it for you. And even if you don't think that, that can be playing out like in this conflict in the back of our minds where someone planted that seed, someone programmed you, and someone told you that subconsciously that you had to get all this from a guy. So even if you're here in the here and now, and you've got all these accomplishments, you've got all these things that you've got to show for your life, and you feel real good about yourself, but there can still be this way in the background because it was just planted there, and it's so programmed and so supported by a society that keeps coming back to that ever so even if it's subtle. So it's go out and get proof of why you are those things that those positive affirmations put words to, have the letters and the words to, but don't penetrate, don't get in further than that. Go and find proof for yourself and make those new habits. You're not going to break patterns, and you're not going to break these old habits. You're going to make new ones, and they replace them. It's the same with what I just said. When you're trying to get over someone, it is so much harder to get over someone. It is so than it is to meet new people, meet new opportunities, meet new challenges, make new friends, make new opportunities for yourself with new things you're doing, and new interests and new places you're going. That is the way out. So it's related to that, but you want to find your proof from somewhere else. than in the guy. So anyway, Leslie, I hope that helps and clarifies that. Hi, Janine from Australia. Okay. Next one is from, okay. There we go. Okay. We have Billy. Billy, are you here? Billy, you're welcome, Leslie. Billy, if you're not here, then you will get this later, so you can listen along. Billy wrote to me and said, "Hi, Jane. When we met, it was great. Then after a couple of meetings, he tells me he heard from others I was trouble. Ooh. He would nonchalantly confront me about my past. He would ask, but when I offered to talk about it, he became silent. Time went on, and he would behave totally differently than at the beginning. When I asked why, I was ignored. Lots of leaving things in the air, making me guess, playing games. He blocked me, so I went out with someone else. Then he says we were in a relationship. He sees me less and less, but always having an excuse as to why. Finally, he says we can't see each other for a while. My sister is coming to visit. After some time, I texted him, and he never answered. I went on a dating website. He was on there with 2 accounts. So I made myself a profile. Does this person have more plans for me in his future? Is this a good example of a narcissist? What do you suggest? Thanks, Billy." Okay, Billy, I'm glad you wrote in. You asked that. So there's lots in here. First of all, I want to ask you this. When he said he heard from others that you were trouble, are you trouble? Are you? I mean, that's the first thing to ask. I mean, is there truth to this? Are you trouble? Do you have something that you need to work on here? Is there something or that you want to change or that you want to address? So, I mean, that's the first thing. He's judging you by how others are judging you. Are they right? Is there some truth to this? Or do we look at this as they're either jealous of you or they have their own issues or they're working out their own insecurities by slandering you or saying things like this about you? Do they even know you? I mean, that's the first thing. Is there truth to this? Because if there is, then that's something that you can look at. Okay, so maybe I do need to change something. Maybe I do need to do something different here. And if that's the case, then that's all you take from this. Okay? You take from this, so maybe this is the purpose of this is to just shine a light onto an area that I didn't see or something that I didn't see that I do now. And so I'm going to do something different here. Okay. So that's a separate thing. If this is just something where, they're saying something here and there isn't much truth to this, and this is something that could be construed different ways, then I would look at this as this is one guy who really is behaving in ways that is not at all relationship material. These are not ways that someone behaves in when they want to be in a relationship with you. You ask him why, and because he's acting different than he was in the beginning, and you ask him why, you want to have a conversation, he ignores you. Okay, so that's like the first red flag. Someone who ignores you when you legitimately have a question that you're asking, a concern, when you want to talk about things. I mean, I know there's the old, she wants to have the talk, and that's like, taboo, don't have the talk. But the reality is, if you want to talk about what is going on, if you want to talk about the relationship, if there is something bothering you and you can't talk, you can't converse with someone that you're in a relationship with, much less a loving relationship, if you can't talk about it, what do you have? I mean, that is the most glaringly obvious thing. What do you have if you can't communicate with someone? If you can't talk with him, what do you have? So I mean, this is the thing. He ignores you, and we can say, well, I wanted to talk. I confronted him. You should never confront. We can say, oh, I learned I should never confront him. That's right. I'm never supposed to confront a guy. Well, there are ways to do it, but to basically reduce yourself to, I can never talk about how I feel with a guy. There's a way to do it. There is a way to do it. And coming across accusatory, or coming across in a way that's very defensive, and coming across a way that's attacking, or that, I mean, those are not good ways to communicate. Ways to communicate are coming from a place where you're his equal, and you're picking the right time to communicate. That's a good time, not when someone's rushed and can't sit down and listen to you. But if you are communicating with someone, there's absolutely nothing wrong with communicating, and you need to have communication in a relationship. So this, to me, honestly, and then he leaves things in the air. He makes you guess. He plays games with you, and then he almost like throws it back in your face. Well, we were in a relationship. He blocks you. Okay, so you go out with someone else. So it's kind of like tit for tat. So this is not a healthy thing anyway, where you're both kind of playing this, and not healthy. And then he can't see you because his sister's coming for a visit. And then you go on a dating website and he's on there with 2 accounts. Yeah, that's like lots and lots of red flags. So I'm going to tell you this, whether or not this person has more plans for you in the future or not, I really don't think it matters, because you've got a guy who is some level of a player here. I mean, he's not direct. He's not honest. He's on there with 2 accounts, and yet he's, I mean, it's just no. So this, whether or not he has plans for you in the future or not, it really doesn't matter. Something has to change here drastically before you can go forward with any of this. And then is this, so I don't think you're in a relationship. I don't think there is anything to do. He's on there with 2 accounts. I mean, he's telling you he can't see you for a while because his sister's coming for a visit. So, I mean, I think you could wait for him to reach out to you. There's no point in reaching out to him and saying there is no relationship. So, I mean, unless you want to get closure and you just want to say, hey, we've got, obviously some differences here. We're looking for different things. We're not on the same page. So I just want to clarify, that I'm going to be moving on, and, I would expect you to do the same, and, nice knowing you kind of thing. And that's it, because there is no relationship. But if you don't need that closure, I think it's just unless he reaches out to you, he's there isn't really anything here. So unless there is more here, and you've missed some details here, but otherwise I'm not seeing anything that you have to do. And is this a good example of a narcissist? Well, I labels narcissism, and labeling someone a narcissist can be helpful, because then you can know, you can group, you can be aware of what category he's in, and you can have more insight, because there's now something to go do lots of searches on and find out more about the dynamics of what being in a relationship with a narcissist is like, and what types of women attract a narcissist. So there can be benefits out of that, but at the same time, I prefer to stay away from labels beyond how it helps you initially, to just have something to describe it as, simply because it takes away from your unique experience and your interaction with that person. Because there are so many in-depth things about it. It goes deeper than just throwing out a label that someone's a narcissist. And it helps to understand that person in order to recognize why you never want to be with someone like that again, and how you can recognize the warning signs. So if you just quickly label someone, it doesn't allow you to look at, okay, so how did this happen, and do your own in-depth work, or just even looking at, what is it in me that attracts someone like that, and what is it in me that makes that person who has narcissistic tendencies or is a full narcissist attractive to me. So I would much rather you stay more at that personal level of looking at what you can do to make sure you never attract a narcissist again, ever, than just to simply look at this person is a narcissist, and just going with kind of the general, more broad pictured stuff. I'd much rather you figure out how it is that you, being an empath, or you being a giver, attracts someone who sucks and takes and takes and takes, because that's really the dynamic there. We can look into all the different ways that they become a narcissist, and there's tons of stuff on that. But the bottom line is, how does it affect you, and what can you do so you're not affected like that again by that person, and that person doesn't light you up so much, like narcissists have a tendency to do. Okay, Billy. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers your question for you. Okay. Tatiana wrote in. Tatiana, are you here, or we'll see you another time, or you'll get this when you're somewhere else. You'll get the replay. Tatiana, she writes, Jane, this is Tatiana. I wanted to ask you this question. How do you build an emotional connection with a guy? What questions should I ask a guy to build an emotional connection that is real? Thanks, Jane, for being you and for being real. Speaking of being real. Thanks, Tatiana, for your kind words. Yeah. So how do you build an emotional connection with a guy? So the main way, in fact, the only way to build an emotional connection with a guy is by you coming from a place where you are real and where you are emotionally connected, which is what you are, for being here and for asking this question, obviously. So it is by being real. And so I find it so interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's what you have. You already know your own answer, essentially, because it's all in your same sentence. How do you build an emotional connection that is real? And you obviously have noticed, yeah, real. I mean, you're noticing there's something to it with being real, and that is it. That is the key. It's you being real and true to yourself and true to what you need, not overlooking. I mean, look at this, okay? How many of you have had, you know what you want, you know what you're looking for, you know what you've gone through and what you've experienced in the past. And so when you are with a new guy, or when you're just in those beginning phases of meeting a new guy, there's so many things that are good, but then there's a few things that really could be conceived as red flags. There's really some red flag stuff there. And you overlook those. Or as you get to know them a little bit more, you still it's still the beginning, and you overlook those. So what happens with that is the piece where we throw things out that need to be there. We don't worry about things. So this is the part about being real. You have to be real to the things that matter to you, that are important to you. So you have to be honest, and you have to be upfront. You have to be real with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself first. Because if you're saying, oh, I can overlook this, or, oh, this doesn't matter as much, or, oh, I'm okay with this. If that is what you're doing, then if you're doing it with yourself and then you're doing it with him, you are setting up a situation where you're going from that deeper place to that more surface and less emotional connection, which is what you're wanting to connect with and what you're talking about here. But you're moving away from that. The more you accept someone's behavior, the more you don't speak up, the more in the beginning. This is in the beginning where this mattered. I was just talking with a woman last week, and she was saying how now she has her must-haves. She was the same one. I loved her term she doesn't use X. She's changing it to past partner. And I love that, because she was saying how she's realized that every guy, every relationship has been something where she's learned something more, and it's accumulated into what she calls her must-haves. And so this is how you build an emotional connection with someone. You know who you are. You know realistically what you can't pretend you don't need. You know exactly what it is that you can live with and what you can't. And how have you learned all this? You've learned all this from your experience. You've learned all this already by what you've been through. So all of these relationships, all of these experiences, and you would look at them and you would say, I've just had horrible luck, or I've had all these horrible experiences, whatever you would say. But all of these have helped you to create essentially what she was saying here, your must-haves. And so as long as you are true to the things that actually matter to you. And these are deeper things than just a look. These are deeper things than just the surface qualities that someone has. I mean, those matter too. But in order to build that emotional connection with a guy, it comes from you setting the tone for that by being true and honest and upfront about who you are, what you need, what you can live with, and what you absolutely can't, so that it doesn't become something that you're trying to talk yourself into, or trying to talk him into, or trying to steer this or control this. I mean, this can be where we can feel out of control, especially at the beginning. So we can try to exert more control in here. But a big part of this is really just recognizing, hey, I have a right to be here in this space. I have a right to be here and to expect certain things, or to have my own list. It doesn't matter, like this, looking for rules of, is this okay? Is it okay that I have this? These are my must-haves. The only person that it matters if that is okay or not is you. If this guy is not a good match for the things that are the most important to you, you need to find that out early. And so the key to building that emotional connection, Tatiana, is starting out on the right note. Starting out by being matter of fact clear about the reasonableness and the necessity of you knowing what it is that you'll accept and what you won't, and not making excuses or not looking for some set of rules around that. If something matters that much to you, it matters that much to you. And there's such a confidence that comes from recognizing that you have a right to ask for what you want, and you have a right to be whoever you are, that can't put up with certain things, won't put up with certain things, desires certain other things. I mean, all of these things are things that make you uniquely you. And so whatever those things are, if that is how you feel, don't apologize for them. Don't try to change them, and don't make yourself wrong, because all of that sends an energy that kind of has you tiptoeing around in the beginning with, okay, well, tell me first more about you, and then I can decide, if I'm okay with these things. You need to approach it instead as, who am I? What am I okay with? Does this person fit into what I'm looking for on these must-haves? I'm not talking about everything. You can tweak different things. Maybe something isn't as important to you when you see the whole package of the person, and then certainly there's room to change that. But what I'm talking about here is that you're sure enough about your absolute must-haves, so that you know clearly what you can live with and what you can't, and you don't set yourself up for failure. You don't set yourself up for the opposite of an emotional connection by coming off as being someone you're not, or accepting more than you're actually wanting to accept and willing to accept, because then it becomes, how do I build an emotional connection way down the road when it's really hard to do that? And now, if that is the case, what you can do is you go back to honest communication first with yourself, honest communication where, I thought I could live with this. You're telling yourself that I thought I could live with this. I obviously can't. So I need to own this, or I need to try to change it and try to be able to accept. But if I can't accept this, I need to own the fact that I can't. I need to communicate that in a way that is a non-threatening, non-accusatory way, just a matter-of-fact way that says, this is who I am. Maybe I've changed. Maybe I've become stronger. Maybe, and there is always a risk that you have outgrown each other if you're going to make this change. But the bottom line is that you're coming across in a way that is real, that acknowledges who you are and owns that. Because whatever you own, whatever you can stand there and own, and know that this is me, this is where I come from, this is who I am. No one can have anything to say to that if you own it. So whatever someone would come at you with or accuse you of or say to you, you'll be able to stand up to that in your own power because you owned it and you recognized that, and you allowed yourself to be vulnerable. Because being vulnerable, which is being real and authentic, it invites vulnerability back. And if someone cannot match that in you, what you have found, and hopefully in the beginning, earlier on, is that this is not a match for you. So great question, and thanks for asking that. Okay, next one. This one is from Anna. Anna says, Jane, I've been following your videos. I want to say I love the passion you put into every one. I feel like I'm sitting in the room with my best friend or my sister. That is just the sweetest thing I think anyone has said. Thank you so much, Anna. That made my day. Okay, Anna writes that she's lost a lot this year, but she's working her way back. With pandemic, she cites that. I am strong and smart and sexy. And before this year, I had tons of confidence. I've been married 2 times and was just in a 3-year relationship with someone I dated years ago. I love him very much. Trouble is, so this is someone else who's come in. See, this is so common. He's back. Yeah. Okay. I was just in a 3-year relationship with someone I dated years ago. I love him very much. The trouble is, he lied to me numerous times. He cheated once. He talked to every ex he's ever had. Then he asked me to marry him and went so far as to get the license. Then he called off the wedding saying he thinks I still love my ex. He would still always tell me I was the love of his life, but I guess now that I look back, the actions didn't always match the words. It's been a couple crazy years, to say the least. He made me the happiest and the most sad I've ever been. I finally walked away. I'm wondering now if it's too late for me to ever find true love again, good love, marriage. Should I just resign myself to the fact that sporadic dating is the best it's going to get to from now on? Do women my age truly still get the happily ever after? So it sounds like you're older. I'd love to hear your input, Jane. Okay. Yeah, Anna, I hear you. And okay, the happily ever after. So here's what happens. Okay, you meet many different men throughout your life, from the time you're first starting out dating to as you get older. Okay, there are so many different men that would be the right men for you at different stages of your life, and not every man carries over into the next stage, right? Because we change and we grow. So what I would say is, if you are older and feeling your age and wondering, do we still get the happily ever after, especially if you've been married or been in bad relationships before? So what I would say to that is that this happily ever after thing, so that is like a social construct. That is something that was used to market to us, to sell us stuff, to make us believe in all kinds of things that had nothing to do with the pure joy and happiness. So yes, you still get the happily ever after, but the happily ever after is something real. The happily ever after is not a fantasy, because fantasy dies out. Fantasy only lasts so long. You can only sustain, you or anyone else can only sustain a fantasy for so long before the fantasy becomes unreal. And something that is not real does not last. So yes, you get the happily ever after still, and it may feel like, oh, but I've had these failed marriages, and I've had these other, this relationship that was supposed to work that didn't work. So you might look at all those things. So, of course you've lost confidence. Of course you've lost all that. And I feel for you. I feel deeply for what, this is so hard to go through that, and to have that high and low. I mean, now so this whole thing, the highs and the lows, like when you talk about the happiest and the most sad that you've ever been. So this is precisely the stuff of fantasy. It's the deep, deep, deep lows and the high heights. Okay. And that is not real. That's not sustainable. You can't live with someone, even though there's so many relationships like that, and they're so unhealthy. You can't live with someone where the heights are these incredible heights and the lows are these just dismal lows. That is no way to live. And what it shows is that there's just this deep ingrained pattern where it's all about just the roller coaster ride and the probably just the coming together and great sex and all that when it's the high, and then just the depressing low sad. So it's not too late, but what you do need to do is look at what was the past version of the man that was the man of my dreams. I mean, what has changed, even if you don't realize it, is you have changed. You have grown. You are not the same person who first believed in this fantasy view of love as you are now. There's been a lot more reality. There's been a lot more realness. So the first thing to do, okay, because I want to get you some hope again. I want to get you where you can start feeling again the hope and the promise and the really, I mean, just the feeling, really just the hope that there is still more to come, because there is. I have never ever seen where someone who has felt like there's no hope hasn't come back at some point. Some are still in process, but I have seen this where they come back and they've got the story now that just, wow, they went from where they were to they found hope again, and they found it, and they found love, and they found the guy, or they found whatever it was they were looking for. And I think this is the key here. I would start by asking yourself, like, what are you looking for here? You're when you were younger, it might have been happily ever after was everything. Okay. So what is realistically everything now? What does it mean now? Because you've had a lot of living with these other marriages and these other lives, really, because we live a different life in each of our marriages and in each of our relationships. It's like you live a different life in there. So what does it mean to you now? What are you looking for in this happily ever after? And that's what I would define. What is that? What does that look like now? And realistically, because this is what I think this is what I said earlier at the very beginning of the session today. I said how many women, their guy that they meet, the one that they wanted to meet, and they marry, and they get, they find what they want finally. It's the guy like after the fantasy, like just bursts open this picture of reality. Like, I was stuck here. I was looking for this, and this actually wasn't what I was looking for. This is actually not what I thought happily ever after really meant. And so this is the part where the fantasy, I feel like we have to burn down that fantasy, because that fantasy is outdated. It's not the same. It's not who we were. It's based on who we used to be. It's based on what we only knew back then. And I feel like settling for just some fantasy view of happily ever after is nothing compared to the reality view of what it's like to have a real life relationship with someone real, where you can show up real, where it isn't based on all of these words that mean nothing, but it's based on actions. It's based on something that is tangible and real and lasting. So rather than looking at this as, I should just resign myself, it's just going to be sporadic dating, that's the best I'm going to get, I would look at this instead as, no, this is a chance for you to have like a whole new lease on life. This is a whole new chance for you to look at who you are now, and how much you have gained, and how much you have grown, and how much things have changed for you, so that you can finally do what it is that you ultimately were looking to get out of this happily ever after. And maybe it looks different, and maybe there's some grieving the loss of that innocence, of that naivete of what it looked like back then, that feels like everything. But that fantasy is just the fantasy will never compare to something real, because the fantasy, as much as it has those highs, the fantasy will always also have lows, because something real cannot maintain that level of the highs constantly. And so those crashes, those lows are going to be real and low. So it really is this, I think, the grieving, the mourning for the simplicity, or even just for the version that we thought it was, for the way we pictured happily ever after to be, and then looking at it as, just as you have grown and changed and just, really evolved so much in that time, even if it doesn't feel like it, or it doesn't seem like it can be better than that. But there is something about that allows you to be more authentic and real, and actually find a more closer match to what you were looking for in that fantasy land, even if we didn't know that was a fantasy. So yeah, that's my input. That's what I have to say, and I hope that helps, Anna, because I feel you on that one. There's a lot of women I talk to, and I've had them tell me that they're here because I give them hope. So I hope I'm able to give you some hope, because I've seen it happen. And I've seen how these women have gone from places of no hope to looking at things differently, and then seeing there was so much more on the other side of that they couldn't see. Well, they were stuck in the old perspective, or in the old, cemented in belief system of what everything had to look like and how it had to go. And so freeing yourself of that is freeing yourself up to receive something beautiful that you may not have ever thought, was possible before. So anyway, I hope that helps. Okay, Lolly, I know you're here. So Lolly wrote to me, and her question is, and this one, I think everyone's going to relate to this one. So Lolly says, being someone who is used to dating men that are financially struggling, emotionally wounded, emotionally unavailable, non-committers, or just men who needed to be taken care of in general, I've decided to take a break, and it's been going well so far. During this time of my break, I've been approached by men who seem to have their lives in order, and seem to have done the work in terms of dealing with their own issues, and are financially doing well. So that's huge. I love getting that update. That's awesome. So you are meeting a different type of men while on this break. Awesome. So the real question is, how do I allow myself to give these men a chance? How do I tell myself that this is exactly the kind of men that I deserve? I'm asking because oftentimes I find myself thinking he's way out of my league, or he seems to be too educated, and I wouldn't give them a chance. It's like my subconscious mind keeps telling me I deserve less. I need help so I can allow myself a chance to be taken care of for once, or rather be with a man who will be my equal. I know you know my journey and my ups and downs on a personal level, because we've had sessions together, and those really did help a great deal. It's also one of the reasons why I've taken a break, so I can attract better men than I used to in the past. Thank you, Jane. Oh, thank you, Lolly. I'm so glad you're here and you wrote that. And yeah, so this happens. So we're the givers, the fixers, the make everything better. This is what we do. And we take a guy, again, because this is what we have been so conditioned to do. So we take the guy we've seen in the movies or whatever else, the stories where he, he's got all of this potential, and, he just needs our love and whatever other resources, money a lot of times, to fix him and make him whole and make him better. And so we fall for it. We're all in there. We're all over it. Yeah, we're on it. Okay. That is probably the biggest dopamine rush we will ever get. Like straight to the brain, like a straight shot. That just, whoa, that feels so good to one, just to imagine what that's going to feel like to be able to do that. with a guy, and then if we get a taste of that, if we actually get that guy, and we do these little things, we shower him with this love, and we see him, show us, come out of his, just show us a side that he doesn't show the world, and it's like, oh, that feels so good, we did that. And then, we might help him we might help with his confidence in another area. We might help him to pursue his dreams. We might throw money at him for something that he, needed to do, whatever. And so basically we're helping this guy. We're seeing in him, we're able to, we're loving him like no one has loved him before. That is absolutely addictive. That is so hard to break. That addiction is like, I do not know personally about the addictions that someone goes through to substances, but I will tell you, I have heard that it is very similar in a lot of ways to what it feels like to be addicted to some drug, because there is just, to be able to be that woman who accomplishes that, what that feels like, the accolades, the accomplishment, the feeling that we get from being that one who can accomplish that. So first, recognizing this is not just a mind over matter thing. This is very much a brain thing, where our brain absolutely lights up when we are with a guy who we see this potential with. And when we get little hits of that dopamine, we get the hits of seeing, yes, he lit up here. He responded to me. He listened to me. He showed me this. He did this. And it just feels like, whoa, I'm getting there. This is real. And we get so excited to be able to do that. So in saying that to you, very much just acknowledging how deep this goes. This is not an easy thing to break. This is not an easy habit to break. You're not going to break it. You got to make a new habit. So here's your new habit. How do you change this? How do you allow yourself to give these men a chance and tell yourself that this is exactly the kind of man you deserve? Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to take things so slow. You're not going to be dissuaded if there isn't that intensity, if there isn't that incredible adrenaline rush, the dopamine hit. If that is not happening, that doesn't mean you throw this away. That doesn't mean you end it. I would much rather you end things much more quickly with a guy who is the dopamine hit rush than you end things quickly with this guy. Okay, so the very first thing is just reminding ourselves that you take things slow with a guy where there isn't all the rush coming in there. Okay, so take things slow in general, but I'd rather you get rid of the guy who's all lighting you up so fast and so quick into the relationship than a guy who's a little bit slower to do that. So this is different because this is more of a logical and practical connection. This is more of actually looking at your relationship and getting to know someone. And so, I mean, if you're talking, really, it doesn't seem like you're really at the very beginning. This is not something that can be called a relationship. It's just you allowing yourself to be at all even interested in them in the first place. So what I would do here is give yourself that time, give yourself that talk that says, okay, so I don't know him yet. Same thing for any guy, you don't know him. So I'm not going to assume anything. I'm going to recognize that I have a pattern of rushing things in with a guy who's opposite of this. So with this guy, I'm just going to let myself warm up to him. I'm going to look at how he meets certain qualities on my list. I'm going to look at the things he does. I'm going to look at his character. I'm going to look at his behavior. I'm going to look at his actions. I'm going to look at how he treats me. I'm going to look at how he treats other people. I'm going to look at all these things. And I'm going to piece together whether or not there's something viable here. How much of an attraction is there? Now, this will never feel like the over the top attraction. This will never feel like that dopamine rush. This will never feel that same way. And it shouldn't, because that has never worked for you. That has never, ever worked. So it is the balance here of who this guy actually is and what you're actually attracted to. We're not looking for you to force yourself or to convince yourself you're into this guy. What we're looking for instead is for you to simply take it slow, go easy, look at the facts, look at what you know about him, look at the reality of not potential, but what is actually there in front of you. And as for any of these things that you could be doing to sabotage it, where you're saying he's out of my league or he's too educated. So the people who are attracted to each other rarely match up on all the things we think they should. I mean, sometimes they do, but not always. So if someone is attracted to you, if someone is interested in you, you are looking at this as it doesn't matter who he is. If we're connecting as human beings, if we're connecting on some kind of a level of just, my human is saying hi to his human, you're saying hello to each other as fellow human beings. You are human beings, imperfect, just here, imperfectly perfect, because you're not performing for someone. He's not performing for someone. You want to be two people meeting up and deciding and assessing, hey, do we have enough in common? Is there enough of an attraction? Do we have enough in common? Are we enough on the same page to see if it's worth getting to the next point? And the next point is just one date, maybe, or maybe it's even just a phone conversation, or the next conversation, in person. But it's not this big jump ahead, get to the, the fairy tale, the happy ending and all that. Just take it slow. Is there enough for you to just, give him your number or meet up again or talk to him? Or is there enough for just even that? Because if there's enough for that, that's enough. So it's looking at this realistically instead of this, this whole fantastical view, but instead just, is there enough just to even get to the next point from where you are now? And as for attraction, I mean, what we're going for here is, hey, he's kind of cute. He's kind of attractive, kind of cute, kind of, he's interesting. Something like that. Not, oh my God, this guy is just, I can't even, feel the ground when I'm with him. We're looking for something that is just, can I actually talk to this person? Could I see myself having a conversation? Could I see myself being friends with this guy? I mean, never underestimate, if you can be friends with someone, there's a lot to be said for that, because you got to be able to communicate and have conversations and all that. So, that is so important. And that's what really a relationship based in reality is. It's looking at all the factors of this person and recognizing who they are and who you are, and recognizing that as two human beings, what matters most is that the two of you are compatible. And getting to know someone over time allows you to gradually decide, is this person someone who I'm attracted enough to? Is this someone who I'm interested in enough? And reassessing what makes someone so attractive. Because if the only reason someone is so attractive to you and there's all the chemistry and all the sparks and all the fireworks is simply because you feel so lucky that you could ever get such a guy in the first place, or he might be the guy you're going to prove your worth with. I mean, it is really hard to base an entire lifetime relationship for as long as you're going for here with this guy. So you need more than just this is the guy I'm going to be proving my worth with. You need a guy you can actually talk to, you can actually live with. All right, Lolly, well, I hope that helps, makes that clear. And everyone else, okay, I'm glad you're here. I appreciate the update. Joy says, am I ever going to be truly loved? And Joy, it's interesting. I get a lot of those like that. These are the short ones, that are just, can you be my psychic and tell me something here? Because there's another one that I'm going to answer in a minute. Will John love me forever? That was Peggy. I don't know if you're on here, Peggy, but I get a lot of those, right? Can I put in my psychic qualities and the way I can read things? And can I use it to tell you if this guy is going to be your guy, if he's going to love you forever, or if you're ever going to be truly loved? And it becomes, can you get a feel for me? And can you tell me if that's the case? So I'm going to answer Joy first, and then I'm going to answer Peggy. But these are the ones I get. And they actually, I do get a feel a lot of times for what's going on and for the people involved. But I want to give you something that you actually have control over, because if I just tell you, yes, it's, this is yes or no, you're not going to have any control over that. And my goal is to give you control over something, because things can feel so out of control. So I want to give you control. So, Joy, when you say, am I ever going to be truly loved? So I will tell you what this most depends on. It depends on, and I know this is going to sound cliche, but the answer to that is, to the extent that you are going to be able to love yourself, whether or not there's a man in your life or not, that is the extent that you're going to feel truly loved. Okay, so hear me out on this one. I'm going to explain this. Because your ability to be truly loved is to feel truly loved. If you have come from such a deficit, if you have come from a place where you have never felt loved, where you have never felt filled up, then someone can love you. And if it is not the right person loving, okay, let me rephrase that, not the right person in a good way. If it is not the person that you hold in your mind as being the type of love that you need to be able to get, which is akin to getting water from a stone, which is akin to getting love from someone so incapable of love, if that is how you are measuring being truly loved, because that is what you are trying to replicate, because that is where you have been, and that was the love that you missed, and you're trying to make up for that, and you're trying to get that, then you are not going to be able to ever feel loved by some mere mortal man. I mean, you really need something that is like on such a deep level. You're talking about a love that is essentially the universe, feeling loved by the universe, feeling loved by God, feeling loved, whatever it is you believe in. But most of that is feeling loved by the person who withholds it the most, which is yourself. So, am I ever going to be truly loved? That question can only be answered once you can look at who it is you are trying to essentially be loved by, because those factors all are what essentially give you that feeling, I'm loved. If it is anything less than that, your entire psyche, your being, you are not going to feel loved. If you have a guy who loves you, who may be the perfect match and so compatible with you, if he's loving you, you won't feel that that's enough. If for you, being loved means being loved by someone absolutely incapable of loving you, who you have to force it out of, who you have to prove and prove and prove you're lovable with in order to get that. So that question is actually so pertinent. It's why I wanted to answer it, even though it was such a short one, but it's so relevant, because it is not about whether or not you will ever be truly loved. It is about whether or not you will be able to recognize true love, or whether or not you're going to be so hung up, and this can be completely subconscious, on the way love is supposed to feel based on how you were not loved and the messages you received from that on how you were supposed to be loved. Okay? Something to think about. That's a deep one. It's a deep one. And so along those same lines, when I get these emails, and Peggy, not sure when you'll get this, but I didn't see you on here now, but yeah. So when you're wondering, will this guy love me forever, right? So what I'm looking for in that, when I see something like that come up, what I'm thinking of first is, okay, so there's some insecurities there, and my question is, are they grounded? Are there grounds for that? Are there reasons that you're feeling that you're having to question whether or not some guy you're with will love you forever? And so that would be when I say, why? What is it about John in this case that makes you feel like he might not love you forever? What is it? Is there something that you need to have a conversation with John about? Is there something that you need to, do a deep dive into what it is about you and your definition of love, or your definition of relationships, or your history that makes you question whether or not he's going to love you forever. Is this a place where you feel unlovable? And is this something deeper than John? I mean, usually it is. Sometimes it's a surface thing where John is giving you reason to believe he's cheating on you. Now, in that case, look at the evidence. If John is giving you reason to believe that he's cheating on you, then that's a problem. That's a real, right now in this moment, problem. If you're looking at this, you may have an issue. Maybe your parents didn't last, right? Maybe your parents were divorced, or you lost a parent tragically in some way. And so this would be a very real thing to you. And the guy is the guy who I'm with. Is he going to love me forever? And again, that's an opportunity for you to look at, okay, so what do I mean by this? And then you're able to answer that yourself to a certain extent by recognizing what you're really asking. So look at that question, will John love me forever? And look at the question beyond that. What are you really asking here? What is the real question underneath that? And then answer that one. If you need help, I can help you with that. But what are you really asking? Not just, will John love me forever, but what's underneath that? Okay. The next one I've got is from Star, from California. Hi, Star. I'm so glad you're here. So Star writes, hi, Jane. It's so generous of you to answer our questions. You put so much love and thought into your content, and I appreciate that so much. Aw, thank you, Star. I do. I love doing these with you, and I'm glad you feel that love and that feeling comes through. Star says she's in her 40s. She's never married, no children. She's had long-term relationships, the longest one being 5 years. She's looking for love, marriage, and a family. Yeah. She's learned many lessons over the years, dated commitment phobes, narcissists, etc. She's crystal clear now on what she wants and what she needs. She's hoping she's not overdoing it when it comes to deciding on and vetting the best match for yourself. Well, Star, we'll walk through that here with you. So she's got 3 men that she's interested in. But so awesome that you're crystal clear on what you want and you need. And yeah, I mean, you can overthink it and overdo it, but you're aware of it, so we'll get into that. But just crystal clarity is awesome. The more clear you are, I really feel so strongly that we literally come to what we don't want with clarity first. And then we figure that out because we have all these, relationships that we fall into because of our programming and everything. And so we go blindly into those. We learn what we don't want, and then we move into the things that we do want after. So they come next. So that's awesome if you've got that clarity on what you do want. Okay, so there's 3 men that you're interested in. They're all different. There's something special about each of them. They all live in different cities than mine, 2 of them in different states. Okay. So you're in the Los Angeles area. You're widening. That's awesome. Yes, I recommend this. Widen your radius. A man can come to you. He can move, especially in this day and age right now with so many people moving around. It's become much more of a thing. Let a guy move for you. Or maybe you want to go on an adventure. And if it gets to that point or you are able to, you can always move somewhere. So anyway, yeah, the world has become so much smaller and people are getting together just by broadening their that radius to see what they find. So all 3 of these men are quality men, and you're trying to figure out where their minds are. Okay, let's figure out where they're at. So we've got man number 1, man number 2, and man number 3. Okay. So man number 1 has a good heart and is a wonderful conversationalist. He asks excellent questions about what I think, who I am, and what I'm about. I feel really comfortable with him, and we can talk about anything and everything. We matched on a dating app, and initially I wished him well because it didn't seem as though we were looking for the same thing. Okay, so when I read this, I stopped there. In terms of children and family, he said it was never a priority for him. So that's where he started from. He said that was not a priority. Long story short, a few weeks later, he reached out and kept reaching out, and then he said he was open to children. Okay. And then you said, okay, I can put him in the friend zone because you like him. And so you continued to stay in touch, called every day. This went on for some time, even when he was out of town traveling for work. Then there was a point he dropped off, but it was because he went traveling overseas and he was ill. And then you reconnected and you talk here, there. The daily stuff stopped. And on your recent conversations included him saying, as a friend. Yes. So I've let go of any romantic expectations with him, but still hold our connection in high regard. Absolutely. So I want to tell you with this guy, when I read through this and I read that he started out saying, children and family, that he wasn't interested in, it wasn't a priority for him. And then a few weeks later, he was open. So that for me kind of took him out of the running before I even got to guy number 2 and 3, because someone is either, in the beginning, they're putting on their best face. And so him telling you it's never a priority I felt that this was like him being honest with you in the beginning. And then he started thinking, I kind of like her. And so he came around. But the result, the second revised version he gives you is never as solid, especially on things like children and family. I mean, it's like when someone comes out with that right out the gate, and I go with that. I mean, if he has ever said he's not into, his priority is not having kids and having a family, I believe him. I would always want you to believe him on that, because it is really rare that a guy hasn't already thought this through and already decided that. It's not this magical thing that he meets you and all of a sudden he decides he wants kids and a family, all because you're so amazing. That something like marriage and family and kids is just, he's already had a lot of time to think about it. So I am clearly going with, as I'm reading this, that you did the right thing. He recognized it. You recognized it. And any romantic, you can be friends as long as you're clear on that. Okay, so I agree. And that's how you knew. You knew in the beginning. You knew right at the beginning, because he said it was not a priority, and that was it. Okay, and you can still be friends with someone. It's just a matter of, do you have in the back of your mind that things might change? And so that's where you don't want to have that in the back of your mind. Okay, man number 2. Okay, I like this guy. He's a widower. He lost his late wife a couple years ago. He's a great father. He's a single father, really polite, nice, funny, and easy, a normal person. I hear you. I've hesitated to date widowers in the past. I never know if the relationship is based on feelings for the gentleman's late wife. Couldn't agree more. And I just want to tell you, Star, I have coached a lot of women who are with widowers. And I will tell you, you're absolutely right to have some concerns. I mean, I also know a widower. I also actually have a really special guy, really sweet, great-hearted guy who is a widower, who I actually have coached. And I would say that he, he is such a great guy, and he is not, their hearts, especially if it was a great relationship, their hearts are still there in a lot of ways, but they also do have the ability to move forward, and they do have the ability to move on. But it has to be the right relationship, and you have to be honest and open with each other. And a lot of widowers are not. They're in denial. So unless it's someone, like this guy I'm coaching is very evolved, and he's able to recognize things, and you could have a conversation with him and he would do things differently, or if there was something, he would be all ears and all open into, just hearing your feedback. But I also know that, these other women that I have coached who they've had to let them go. They have had to end things, and heartbreakingly so. It was really hard because they were attached, but the guy he was not ready. He wasn't ready. He was still stuck on, and some weird things come up, right, where they just can't let go of certain things. So, but on the whole, I would much rather you be with a widower than some guy who's still single, who has never had a relationship, because often he is so set in his ways, So this guy, he does everything right. He calls when he says he will. He messages you daily. He asks about you. He respects boundaries. He works hard to see you and more. Okay, so you don't know if it's a genuine interest in you or if there's some transference there. Yeah, that's something you probably want to figure out. He said he's ready for a relationship. He's dated several people since losing his wife. I do like the fact with a widower, if he's dating. If he has dated several women, I do like that rather than you're the first one. Because I think there were a couple of them where they, the ones where you're the first one are not good. So if he's dated several, that is a good sign. And the fact that he's a single father who's a good dad, I really like good dads. I really say good dad went way up on my list after knowing what it takes to be a dad. So if he's in tune to his kids and yeah, I can, yeah, obviously I can sense, I'm not sure how I feel about him yet either. So if you're feeling that way, I'm picking up on that, but I'm also feeling that way. I need more information about him. So because I am not, it is much harder to tell where the widower is, someone who's lost someone, but generally I much prefer widowers. The biggest question being, do they have the ability to move on to someone else? Is their heart open to someone else? And almost always they are, but it just depends on how much they're willing to do things to show you and to actually get on board with you, to leave. Because for them, they're caught up in this guilt. I've worked with enough of them to understand this and learned enough about me. So a lot of times it's this guilt of moving on. It's the guilt of replacing who they've lost. And so if he can have open and honest conversations with you about that, not necessarily right now, but as you go along, if he's able to openly recognize, if he can talk, if he doesn't need to feel like he has to hide the reality of where he's at with remembering her or feeling guilty, if he's able to actually talk about that, but not incessantly, like not so it becomes that's all you're talking, or that's the majority of what you're talking about. But I definitely have a lot more. I put a lot more stock in a widower than a guy who has been single up until that point. Just from experience with seeing it and seeing women in these relationships. But the make or break thing really is his ability to self-reflect. If you point something out, if he denies it or doesn't do anything about it, that's significant. I had a guy, or this woman, she was dating a guy, and he would not bring over his, was it that he wouldn't bring his dog over because the dog was actually more his wife's dog? Anyway, there was something weird with that because she had a dog. The woman I was coaching that he was dating, she had a dog. And so it was natural for them to, have their dogs, meet. And there were no issues, dog issues at all. This was nothing to do with dog personalities. This was solely this guy would not ever bring the dog over. And it became like a real, point of contention because this dog represented his ex. And he just could not get past it. And she pointed it out to him and they talked it through. And, it just, the dog represented more than just a dog issue. It was something deeper. So yeah, it was interesting to know that. So I would say on that one, the dog, and then her ashes. He kept the ashes out. He hadn't put the ashes away. Was another part of it. And then the final straw was he hadn't replaced the mattress. He was fine with going over to her place, but he hadn't replaced their bed. And she just couldn't get past that. And I didn't want her to get past it because it was a concern because it just was a sign that he was hanging on to this and holding on to that. And if he's holding on to essentially like the marriage bed, right? Because I think he was religious, maybe not, but it just, the fact that it was just this idea that he could not give that up. That was like the last straw. And it was a lot. It really was a lot. It doesn't sound, so this is where I said, like, I'm not sure how I feel about your guy because I've heard things like this. So I need to know more. But on the other hand, I mean, there's this other guy who was basically kind of a narcissist, kind of a jerk. And he was a widower. I actually, he was not at all like this other guy I'm describing to you. This was, he ended up, now he was just kind of a player. He wasn't ready. He was like dating others. And so my client, she ended up telling him, I think that they weren't on the same page. So she moved on. She's actually happily married now to a really good guy. So it all had a happy ending. But what was interesting is we eliminated him not because of how hung up he was still on his wife, because he really wasn't. He was actually much healthier with the way he was with his deceased wife. But he had come out of the gate from this loss, and he was like a player now. So that was the issue that ended things for them. He just wasn't treating her well enough, and she always suspected that he was. Well, she didn't know if he was cheating, but she felt like he might. And then she did find out that he was online, and she found out there were other women. So we eliminated him based on the fact that he was a player, not that he was a widower. He actually, in terms of moving on from his wife, was not the typical. So these were two different types of men that were just, Lisa and I understand those. So anyway, hopefully that gives you a little bit of an example on widowers. But generally, I'm in favor of them as long as they're not players, and that they are not, stuck with some weird stuff on there. So good. Okay. Number 3. So he's another good heart. There's definite mutual attraction there. He's come on full force from the start. Okay, so that part, I'm going to pay attention to that, because he's come on full force from the start. So that makes me think, whenever I see that, my thought is, okay, so does that mean this is going to die out? So does that mean basically he knows he can't sustain this, so he's giving you everything in the very beginning? That's what I always look at when I see that full force from the start. Okay, he's been vulnerable, open, honest. He's even mentioned marriage several times. Okay, so that was my other thing. He said things like, when we get married. So, at first I looked at that and I thought, okay, so he's jumping ahead. He's being a bit presumptuous. He's also just, it goes along with the full force from the start. He knows what he wants, obviously. Yeah. So I guess the question is he exactly what I said? Is he jumping ahead because he knows he can't sustain this? So is there going to be more to come in what you see from him? So he said he'll let you catch up. So that's good with your feelings for him. You enjoy the conversations. He reaches out daily. He's been trying hard to meet you in person too. Busy career. I like that if he's got a busy career and he's also, has time for you. That's good. So the career is not everything. You're being careful. You've probably got some walls up. Not to be mean, but I'm aiming to be careful, making sure I choose wisely this time. Yeah, that's exactly. I would take it really slow with this guy. I would take it really slow, because the full force from the start is a concern, because he doesn't know you well enough yet. So on this, busy career. So is that going to be? I mean, that's nice, but does it also mean, he's so busy that he won't always have time for you? Is that something that's going to happen with that? Your note at the end: all of these men are solid, great careers, independence, intelligence, are responsible. They have so much to offer. They know how to listen, how to pursue. I'm enjoying getting to know them. I'm wondering, how do I know how to choose the correct one? If it's one of them, I'm still in the dating apps and open to meeting other people. Okay. So you need more from them. So you need more. How do you know who to choose? Don't choose. Not yet. Not yet. Although the first one, it sounds like you've chosen as a friend, and that's good, because he's kind of matched you with that, and that makes sense. You picked up on that. The widower, we got to see more from him. I would not, there's no need to make a choice yet. I would stay there with that middle ground. And then, you just need to know more. And there's time for that. It doesn't sound like he's in a rush. I like that he's a good dad. He's a good person, good character, thoughtful. You don't need to know how you feel about him yet. If there's any kind of an attraction, and again, we're not going for the full bore over the top thing that dies out. So if you're not sure, take your time, get to know him better. If he rushes you into making a decision, then we can talk about that. But for right now, you're fine. Just, figuring out how you feel about him, just letting things go the way they are. The third one, so just, he's fine, keeping him there for now. it's okay to have those walls up. I see them more as just you're being a little bit careful, because when someone comes on that full in the beginning and they want you to basically come over right away and commit and be all into them, that's when they disappear, or they they get what they want. So the fact he's mentioned marriage several times, says when we get married, I'll tell you my experience with men like him who are, talking about marriage several times and says when we get married, if there's a lighthearted jokingness to it, that is much more healthy than if it has a kind of a controlling feel to it, or a like a conquering feel to it, a very overpowering energy with that when we get married. I think that's what the difference between the two. If it is more of a when we get married in a lighthearted, joking way, I'm that sounds good. Perfectly fine with that. I would feel much more positive about that. If it is more along the lines of the if it's the full on, if it's more of the controlling, the dominating kind of a taking over things when we get married. You know what I mean? Like there's just a different feel. Does that make sense? The difference between the two energies? Does that make sense in there? Okay. I hope that makes sense. But that's what I would go with that between the two. Okay. Okay, good. I understand that. I figured you would. Okay. So that's what I'm looking at. So I don't think there's a reason to choose anything right now. I think it's just being aware of what you're attracted to in each one of them. You're attracted to something very different in each one of them. And so I really think this is you narrowing it down, being very clear on what you're looking for. And so that's in there. So I think that's clear. You don't have to do anything. So good. Okay. I'm really glad you understand that. Okay. Marianne. And Star, I'm glad. Your detail was awesome. You gave me so much more in there, and it really helps. So thanks for being here and for writing all that, and keep doing what you're doing, and keep me posted. Okay, Marianne, are you here, Marianne? Yes, it's nice to meet 3 different people. That's why I want to keep you there, and I don't want you making a decision. I don't want you choosing anyone yet, because that's what I suspected, is that you're used to one and you're feeling like the need to hurry up and to choose one. And I don't want you to do that. This is different. This is how you find something different. So I want you to meet these different people. And I love that you've gone outside of your comfort zone there. So good. That's good. You're welcome. Okay. Marianne writes, I've been married and divorced 3 times now. Okay. All 3 marriages lasted 10 years. I recently had a man I've been living with for over 2 years suddenly ghost me. Oh, Marianne, I'm so sorry. That is so hard. It's been 16 months since that happened. I'm too afraid to go on a date or even speak with an available guy. Oh my goodness. I am so sorry that you went through that. That is really, really hard to be ghosted with someone who you're living with for over 2 years. All 3 marriages ended because my spouse cheated. One spouse cheated several times, but I keep forgiving him because I don't want yet another marriage to fail. Okay. And I just want to stop you right there, Marianne. I want you to listen to that piece. Okay. You just said, I keep forgiving him because I kept forgiving him because I didn't want yet another marriage to fail. Okay. So I want to tell you, this is where you need to accept the fact that if you had another marriage that was going to fail, it was going to fail. Okay. This is the acceptance. This is where the shame and the guilt or the embarrassment comes in. Oh no, this is my 3rd marriage. I can't be that woman that has 3 marriages and all my marriages has failed. Okay. So anyone who would judge you like that, they are not your people. They are not people that we care about. We do not care about their judgments. We do not care about what they think of you. We do not care about them. You do not stay in a relationship for the 3rd time of just because you are so embarrassed or feel ashamed that this marriage, you're going to have another marriage that failed. Okay. You don't stay, you don't put yourself through what you're going to put yourself through by staying in. If you have a guy cheating on you, okay, And when you have a guy that's ghosted you, that guy, yeah, okay. You don't stay there. Obviously, there were problems, and you don't take all the responsibility for all that. So if you feel that blame or shame, I mean, it just you don't take that on yourself. If he went back to his ex-wife, and that's what you've heard, um, okay. So there's a lot here. I used to believe it was them. I feel like, but you don't, bottom line is you don't stay in a relationship. I just want to finish that thought. You don't stay in a relationship. You don't stay in a marriage. You don't stay in something when it's hurting you, um, just because you're afraid to acknowledge or to have have one more failed marriage or failed relationship under your belt. Okay. You don't stay there because of that. We can try to work on it. And that's, you try to work on it. You try to do what you can. You try to look at what you've learned. You try and look at, okay, is this person willing to do this with me? Are we in this together? But if you have someone cheating on you, if, I mean, honestly, I'll tell you, it sounds like to me, when you've had your marriages when you've had 3 marriages and they're 10 plus years, well, I will tell you this, you'll find your people because they won't be judging you. So if you have people judging you, they're not your people. Okay. You want people who are human and can accept that. I mean, they may have an opinion, but they don't need to judge you and put it on you. I mean, you can tell the difference. If not, I want you to learn the difference between being judged and knowing people have opinions. And there is a real difference. Someone can have an opinion, but they don't put it on you. You don't feel it resting on you. If you feel something resting on you, and this goes for everything, that is judgment. If you just feel someone's opinion, that is someone who has an opinion, but is not judging you personally. It's a difference between a personal thing and a thought about something. Okay. So learn the difference so that you're not walking around always feeling like everyone is judging you, because you will find people with opinions and you will find others who will judge you. The people who judge you are not your people. The people with opinions can still be your people, but they can have opinions that differ. But it doesn't mean that they make you feel bad for it or that they make you carry that. Okay. But I will tell you this, what I'm reading here, if someone is cheating, if all 3 times someone has cheated, normally that is because there is not direct communication going on. Someone feels the need to cheat because there is no talking about things. There is no clear-cut communication. There's nothing happening to actually that can fix it. There's no dialogue happening. There's no hope for it because there's no dialogue. There's no talking happening. There's no communication. So that is, it probably was over, and it was just, both of you wanted it to, or one. It only takes one to want to keep it going, and they just don't have to talk, and then it will continue like that. So, yeah. So it sounds like those were already. The only issue was communication and being able to look at the elephant in the room and talk about it. So that is something to look for, is the ability to speak directly, the ability to communicate, the ability to talk about stuff that's going on, and the elephant in the room. And that is hard to do, very hard to do. And that's where conflict resolution classes or courses, the book, Marshall Rosenberg, I think, Nonviolent Communication, that's all about, conflict resolution, being direct, being able to use I statements, but more than that, it's the tone. And it's so, anyway, so it sounds like that probably, without knowing more, but generally when there is that involved, it's because there's a breakdown in communication, or there never was communication there. Okay. Okay. So you're feeling like it's you. I must be the reason my relationships keep failing, but you don't understand why. I even tried choosing a guy who wasn't my type, thinking that might be the issue, but no, he was marriage number 3. After that, I spent several years alone until I finally took a chance on Mr. Ghost Me. Yeah, that's hard. He broke my heart, my spirit, and my self-confidence. I have left. Yeah, so that's what you're dealing with now, that self-confidence, right? I'm at a loss as to what's wrong with me. I've given up all hope of meeting my forever guy. I don't trust my judgment at all anymore, and I've resolved that I'm just going to be alone for the rest of my life. Is there any hope for you? Yeah, there's hope for you, Marianne. There's hope for you. And that's, It's similar to what I talked to about when I addressed the other question there by the other woman who I think she had 2 or 3 marriages as well, and the same thing happening. So I want to say this, okay? No guy gets to take your spirit away. No guy gets to take your confidence away. No guy gets to do that to you. It's go back to the, you can have 20 guys and they all have a different opinion. It's subjective, and yeah, you can look at it as, okay, it's me. So you know what the common denominator is? The common denominator that I see is just direct communication. The common denominator is picking guys based on more of a fantasy than reality. So it's the same thing. Don't resolve yourself to going it alone for the rest of your life. Look at it as, okay, so similar to what I told the other woman, you came from a place where there was a lot of fantasy built into relationships, and there was a lot of fantasy about the way relationships are supposed to be and the whole happily ever after thing. I mean, there's a lot of fantasy around that. So look at this as, how do you change this within yourself so that you're not looking at relationships as a fantasy? Okay, so instead of a fantasy, this is about reality. And so I would ask you this, of those marriages, okay, of those relationships, how much of that was about the fantasy and the notion of fantasy love and the happily ever after love, the way that it was presented to you and the way that it was programmed, the way you came to be conditioned to believe, even on a subconscious level. I do not see it as, okay, this is it. You're just, you can't trust yourself and you're just going to be alone for the rest of your life. I don't see it that way at all. Okay. I see it as, this is, once again, it's the opportunity. It's what I talked about with how you reunite with some past guy from your past and everything's all of a sudden, you feel so hopeful and excited. And then all of a sudden it's like, that's the relationship. That's like the wake up call. That's the fantasy reset. And I really think that's what it is. And so look at this as, okay, so this, it took 3, but that's like the relationship reset. It's like the fantasy reset. So now you're able to look at this as, okay, so who am I now? Knowing so much more about love and relationships. What do I learn now? How do I now approach love? Knowing that I'm in this whole other place now, because I can see a relationship for what it is and not this fantasy thing, but this thing that goes back to the question of the one who asked about, how do I build an emotional connection? If you are real, if you're looking at a relationship as being something real and not some notion that was sold to you, that this is the way it is, but never turned out that way because that was wrong, you can look at this as, the key is being real with myself, being real about who I am, being real about what I accept, what I won't accept, being real about what matters to me, being real about all of these things. Because if you are honest with yourself and real with yourself first, then you're going to be used to that, or you're going to get into the habit of that, and you're going to be able to then be more real and authentic about your needs, about when you see the elephant in the room, you're not going to need to run from it. So that's what you're transitioning into. That's what this is about now, is being able to look at the elephant in the room and not run from it. And instead being able to see that for what it is and not for what you were thinking it had to be, right? Or this fantasy or this notion that it has to look like this. You're open now to something new and something different. And that is beautiful, because what will come from that will be something different from what you had. So talk about hope. There is so much hope, because it is all about discovering who you are now, not repeating what you had to repeat in the past. You're not going back to, okay, so this is what I keep, again, it goes back to this idea of being loved, right? The woman who asked, will I ever find love, or will I ever be loved? If love for you, if the definition meant someone who could fill that void, who could do for you what you have always been trying to get, so you're choosing a certain type of person that you had before, that is a whole different thing. And what you're doing now is you're not doing that. You're not repeating that. You're now in a place where you're coming from, where you are now able to look realistically at, who am I now? What do I want? What am I not trying to make love into anymore? And what am I realizing that love actually is? So it really takes looking at love as you have learned it to be. It's not a fantasy. It's something real. And if it's going to last, you need it to be something real that lasts. So, so where I would start is going back to your definition of, I would write a definition of love what it was when you first, were that little girl dreaming of getting married, and or whatever your dream was, but it sounds like, you were able to get married 3 times. So you are looking at it as, what did love mean to you? What would your definition of love have been as that little girl? What was your definition of love in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, and then now in your 50s? What is your definition of love now, and how has that changed? And look at the ways that has changed throughout the years and throughout the seasons of your life. And I would look at that as being, okay, so there's hope now, because I am looking at love in a more realistic way than I did. And if you aren't, then I would look at it realistically. What does love mean now to you? What have you learned love isn't? If you're not sure what love is, look at what have you learned that love isn't, and start with that to see what it is. But I would take those questions that I've answered from some of the others, and just look at how those are relevant to you too, then, in that way. But yeah, so much hope. It's just reframing that and looking at, what does it mean to what is this whole notion of happily ever after, or finding love with someone? What is that? And what does that mean to you now with what you know? Okay. All right. And then, anyway, I'm glad you wrote that in. I'm glad you sent that, and I'm glad hopefully that helps. So someone wrote in, she called herself Wise One now. And I love that, because she's been, to hell and back, and she's Wise One now. So she says, Dear Jane, what tips can you give us ladies to see through the BS, which is very convincing when at the beginning we are asking these guys all the right questions and they are answering what sounds right? And how do we get it through our thick skulls that when they say they're going to get a divorce or plan to get out of a relationship, that it's a definite red flag? So how do we listen to those red flags and know that those are red flags? I know this would sound silly to some, but when you get hooked, no doubt with their full-on charm, it's really hard to not just see the fairy dust and think it's going to all work out, right? Yeah, and I am no pushover. I'm angry and strong now for being duped and strung along. Well, no more. Thank you for your devotion to us ladies. It's made a huge difference. Oh, okay, Wise One now. You are wise. You are wise. You always were. But we forget how much we know, and we forget to trust ourselves. Okay. So I'm going to tell you, at the heart of this is literally, you have to think of yourself as an equal, and you have to raise yourself up so that you are not falling prey so easily to words and to come-ons and to players who say all the right things but don't give you anything in advance. So I think the biggest thing is to recognize something. When you hear things like, I'm going to get a divorce, I'm leaving her, I'm just in a really unhealthy or unhappy relationship, I plan to get out of it. So when you hear sob stories, okay, that make you feel for this guy, that really bring out the heartstrings, and you really want to help him, you really want to be there for him, you really want to do something. So when you feel that way, you have some awareness, right? You have something here that triggers that, right? You sense something happening, and if you don't, I want you to recognize, I want you to pay attention, because you will. There will be something that again, this is like the dopamine rush. This is an actual physiological chemistry thing that happens in our brains, that we light up when we hear things like, I'm going to get a divorce. I'm planning to get out of this, because we feel like we're going to be the one to do this. We're going to be the one to cause him to finally get the divorce, or we're going to be the one to finally get him out of this relationship. We're going to save him, essentially. And Lolly, I think this is what you were talking about earlier too, right? The savior thing. We're going to save him. We're going to fix him. We're going to be able to do this with our love. And so it's all the same. So the thing to recognize here is what is the actual action? What are the actions behind these words? I want you to be so much of an equal, and so not needing, so not just ready to lap up just any of this, any words. I want you to be so strong in who you are and your ability to tell when someone is real or BSing you. I want you to be able to trust that intuition and trust yourself. So some of this is just practicing. And an exercise I talked about last week was just noticing different people's energy, and different people, like just in your everyday, going about your everyday living, just noticing like different people that you run into, what you pick up on them. Because I want you to notice like who you accurately get a feel for, that you behave differently with because of different people's energies. I want you to notice that, because what's really important is how that translates into when you sense that someone is giving you, BS. I want you to see that for what it is. This person is saying something that may or may not be true. And based on my past experience, it hasn't been. So I need to see evidence before I'm going to believe them. So in this case, when someone says, I'm going to get out of this relationship, or I'm getting a divorce, so you put on your calendar, okay? Really what I would like you to do, if someone is not divorced, and if someone is in a relationship with someone else at the time, and they're actually telling you this, I would like you to run the hell out of there as fast as you can, and just, and don't look back, because those are the biggest red flags to begin with. When someone feels free enough to tell you, they're not even lying. Lying is bad enough. We'll get to that. But lying is bad enough. If they're lying to you, you're going to find that out. But if they feel so comfortable that they can pull the wool over your eyes, that they can do a snow job on you, that they can tell you that they are getting a divorce or plan to get out of a relationship, and they don't need action to back that up, that they're not risking that you're going to get out and get as far away from them as possible. There's cockiness in there. There's a player mentality. There's something in there that they are not seeing, that they have literally just, given up any chance of being with you. If they are that clueless to think that they can say something, there's arrogance, there's so many things in there. And I think you found that out because the person who said these things to you was actually, that's what he was. He was arrogant. He was cocky. He was a player. You never knew where you stood with him. So anyway, okay. So I would hope that you would get out right away. But if you don't get out right away, okay, the next thing that I want you to do, if you're not getting out right away, is I want you to don't believe a word he says. I want it all to be actions. It needs to be consistent actions over time. The real thing, actions. I don't want you to believe anything he says when he says something like that. If he tells you, I'm not ready for a relationship, if he tells you, I'm not good enough for you, I want you to believe that. But I don't want you to believe the other stuff when he's telling you, I'm going to get a divorce, I plan to get out of a relationship. I don't want you to believe that, because it doesn't mean anything till you actually see it, okay? So I need you to either get out right away for yourself, or because then you get more attached, and then you start to justify behavior. Once you're going down the path of justifying your behavior, it is just bad, because then you're just justifying and just, okay. So the whole thing with this is, actions. You need actions. Words are not going to be enough. I know this will sound silly to some. Oh no, I already read that. Okay. So, yeah, because you're going to get hooked. Okay, so this is the part I wanted to come to. So you said, I'm no pushover. I'm angry and strong now for being duped and strung along. So this is what I want you to remember. Okay. This anger and strength is not a one-time thing that happens to you when you're duped shortly coming out of that. Okay. So this is not like a one-time thing that you get angry and strong once you see it and that's it. And then you go back to being, when you meet the next guy who seems all charming, this, you go back to being like this. I want you to see this. Okay. You have strength in you. Okay. You have an emotion in you called anger, and it's there for a reason. Because what happens, we are all capable of being angry. Because I'll tell you, there's so many women I meet who are just so caught up in being so nice and so nice until the switch flips, and all of a sudden you are angry, and then you turn into what you're like, oh, I'm so mad at myself. I got angry. And so I want you to remember here that anger is a totally acceptable emotion, and you need to have your anger. I feel like anger is one of the things we run from the most. You have every right to have the full gamut of emotions, which includes anger, because ironically, men really only have anger. That's like their acceptable emotion. And even then, it's not really even that acceptable, but it's the only one they get. Well, you get it too. You're allowed to be angry as well. Like our culture makes us all nice. You're supposed to be the nice girl. You're never supposed to be angry. But, just like men are not supposed to be anything, according to the culture. They're not supposed to have feelings or anything. I mean, we all are human beings. We all have all the emotions. Men would be so much healthier if they could have all these emotions and not just the ones that they're allowed to have, because they feel them. They feel real emotions. They feel everything. They don't just feel anger. They feel everything. They just haven't been allowed to express it. They haven't been given permission, and they've had it the opposite. They've been shamed for having any other emotion. And then anger, they're allowed, but then they get treated, everything is just punitive so they have like all or nothing with that. But it's no way to live, and that's why it's sad what we see because of that. And so for women, it's similar but different in that we get nice. We're not supposed to ever have anger. We can be sad or disappointed or all these other words. It's amazing how many words you give me when I talk about anger and all these other words. I mean, think about it, right? Like when you say, actually, if you're on here, think about the word anger, right? What word would you so much rather say other than anger? Or I guess I'll ask you that. I mean, how are you comfortable with being angry? Are you comfortable with being angry? Because the majority of us, that is not, I mean, as soon as we say, as soon as someone might say we're angry, we can feel like, I can't be angry. I can't be angry. I can't have someone think that I'm angry. I'm supposed to be nice. Well, nice is so fake if it's not real. If you're hiding resentment, if you're, if there's all these other emotions that are there, and that will make someone very, very angry. If they always have to be nice. So I'm not surprised. And so this is where bring anger into this. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to have anger as part of that emotion. And what I would encourage you to do in future relationships is don't ever allow yourself to have resentment build to the point that it blows. And you reach a point where everything just blows up because you allowed yourself to be so nice or so accommodating or so whatever you're supposed to be, so that everything built to the point that the resentment just reached a breaking point. And how you do that is just by acknowledging what you need and acknowledging what you feel and acknowledging that. And it really takes practice. So what I would encourage you to do is to practice that just in ordinary situations. Practice saying, I felt so angry. I felt so whatever it is, but practice saying that to make it easier. So that it isn't just this all or nothing where you're incapable of feeling anger until it reaches that breaking point, because someone will always be able to tell what's underneath. In fact, I find this with a lot of the women I work with who have a lot of feelings about, where they are angry and they're trying to walk around that. They're trying to tiptoe around that. They're resenting things. And so if that's what's, if that is a pattern for you, tap into your anger. Let your anger become something powerful for you. Don't be afraid of it. Don't run from it. It will tap you into what is really going on. You will be able to see things if you allow yourself to anger as part of those emotions. Okay. And then it won't get to the breaking point where you blow up and everyone can say, oh, see, she was crazy. I knew she was going to do that. No, you're not crazy. And if you blow like that, it's simply because it told you what happened was you were just holding it in and holding it in and holding it in and holding it in and building up that resentment. You can't do that. That it's not fair to you, and it's actually not fair. If this helps you, it's not fair to the person you're with, because at some point you cannot keep that level of resentment and anger inside. It has to come out at some point. Otherwise, it comes out in your health. Otherwise, it comes out in so many other ways. Okay. All right. So I am just going to make sure I answered all of these, but I think I did. I think I think we did. Let me make sure. Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here. I am so glad you're here. Did I miss anything? Is there anything that jumps out at anyone? That there was anything that I didn't answer for you? If you weren't one of these questions that were asked, is there anything that I can touch on in closing that? Yeah, we're not crazy. Nope. Yes, it's held in because we don't want confrontation. And you know what? We are so afraid of being told we're crazy. We are so afraid of having someone, that will literally stop us in our tracks. Shame hits us, right? It's guilt because we're so used to being controlled that way. Those of us who, actually the majority of us who were brought up in this world, in this culture, that is it. And so when you finally blow, when you finally say something, it's like, it's over, and the guy you're with looks at you like, see, I knew you had it in you all along. I knew you weren't that good. I knew you weren't that angelic. I knew you weren't. I knew. And what do we do with that, right? Like, it's like, oh, I'm so ashamed. I feel so guilty. He found me out. He saw me for what I am. I exposed myself. And we take on the shame. We take on the guilt of being found out. When instead it's like, okay, so someone drove me to that, or this culture drove me to that, or something drove me to that, right? Like, instead of like adding to that by attacking yourself with, oh, if I just kept it in, because I hear that from so many women, like the day after, and they'll be scheduling an emergency session on Mondays. Mondays are my most busiest day. If you ever can't get on my calendar, Monday is what, and that's why Monday is so busy, because it's what happened over the weekend that everyone gets on there, because that's the issue. What happens is, you say something that you shouldn't have said, and you say something that you didn't mean to say. And what that all is you didn't speak up early enough. You didn't say something early enough. Before that resentment built, before all that happened. You're not crazy. You're absolutely not crazy. And it's not just me saying that. It's because it is underneath. It's what happens. We freeze up. We absolutely freeze up when it's time to be direct, especially if you are with a strong personality, a domineering personality that is basically, and these are usually the men we're attracted to, stronger personalities who do these direct things better than we do, who show, who have that directness, who have that ability to think practically and logically, and just, if they're angry, they're angry. They don't think about it. If they're upset, they're upset. If they're, whereas what do? We have 1,000,001 other words to use instead of anger. I'll tell you this real quick. I remember when my kids were growing up and they were getting a little bit older, and I was reading all about feelings and emotions, and I really wanted to encourage my kids to, in addition to the environment we set where they could feel free to talk about their feelings and emotions, because both my husband and I never had that growing up in our environments. But one of the things I really wanted to, I jumped at anything that was about feelings and emotions and encouraging that in kids. And I came across this exercise, or this suggestion to cut out, like on construction piece of paper, all different words for emotions, so that there's just a whole gamut of different emotions, and put them and tape them to like pencils, so that they can have a jar filled with these pencils with like these little like flowers, so it looked like a flower like that with like a little flower in it, and then write the words on there, so that whenever they were feeling something, they would have a place to go to read these little words, and figure out what emotion they were feeling. It's a way to encourage them to be speaking about more emotions. And you know who got so much out of that? I did, because I was so used to saying, I'm so disappointed. I'm so, I was so used to tiptoeing around anything to do with anger. And so, and actually, I don't even think I acknowledged that I was angry until my daughter was born, because ironically, it took a dynamic. It took a really interesting dynamic between when I had two kids, and I came face to face with the reality that I had grown up in a family where there was just me and my sister, and one of us was good and one of us was bad. And it was always that was just a dynamic, and that was so common. I grew up in a really religious environment as well, but it was very common to assign, like, one is the stereotypical good and one is the stereotypical bad. So you have the black sheep and the angel, and that was just the way it was in my family. And I don't think that my parents didn't realize anything about that. I mean, that was just the way it was. That's how they grew up. That's how everyone grew up. But it was so interesting, because when my daughter was born, and all of a sudden now I have two kids, subconsciously that awareness had crept in, and all of a sudden I have two kids, and everything that I have learned about psychology and about child parenting and emotional intelligence, and just all of these things I had learned, all of a sudden I'm face to face with, what do I do here? I have two kids, and neither one is bad. They are both just kids, just human beings. What do I do with this? And for the first time, anger came up. And I remember getting a punching bag. I have actually, if I've talked to you about this, I'm repeating myself, but I talked to a lot of my coaching clients about getting a punching bag, or getting access to a punching bag. Because let me tell you, I had never, ever allowed myself to admit or acknowledge. I'm like, I was just not angry. I mean, to say anger was just something that never applied to me. I could not be angry. I mean, that was so just a taboo for me in growing up. And this was, I was in my late 30s at this point. And so to go that long with never being angry is pretty incredible. So when my daughter was born, and I'm faced with this, what was so interesting about it was how I had gotten this punching bag, because I'd looked at how to help my kids adapt to the new sibling. And so really wanting to figure out how to do that and help him to adjust to a sibling. And so we got a punching bag, and you know who was using that punching bag was me, because I would be frustrated. That was my favorite word. Frustrated was safe, right? I mean, how many of you can say frustrated and not angry, right? We're okay with frustrated. Can't say angry, right? But we can say frustrated. But just having a place to go with that anger, I started using that punching bag. Whenever I was frustrated, I would go out there, and I would we had it outside in the garage. We're in California, so it was okay to be outside year round. And I just remember discovering like this whole new me, because I was just able to get my full emotions out. And something about that, my son never used that nearly as much as I did. And it was like so healthy to have a place to take that, because that anchor is going to be there. And I totally, and so I didn't need to feel that, except I knew it was safe to. So it wasn't like this off limits thing. So I was able to feel all of my different emotions. So anyway, Yeah, because I agree. Life is too short to spend it angry. And that's exactly it. Because if it doesn't come out, it's underneath. And life is far too short to have hidden anger. Because that hidden anger builds and it just builds. And the resentment that's under there and what goes on under there, it is so unhealthy. And we have to have a place to bring that so that we don't snap one day and have someone accuse us of being a crazy person because that anger has snapped. Because I will tell you, what comes out after that anger is usually so much more real than anything that was ever before that anger. Because that anger just clears the way, and then you can speak your truth, and then you can speak to who you actually are. You can see yourself more clearly because all of a sudden you're not living behind some notion that you just have a certain few emotions that you have, and that's it. And any other emotions are off limits. So there is something so, it just gets things moving. It's so just therapeutic to just be able to acknowledge what's there, and because it is there. It is there. We have feelings and we have all different emotions, and anger is one of them, whether you like it or not, and whether or not you can admit that or not. But having a place for it to go allows you to move through and have it not play such a role and not have that emotion, the resentment build. So anyway. All right. Well, thanks for joining me. Thanks for being here. I could talk to you guys forever. Yeah, and I will tell you this: your tuition is always going to be spot on, KP. Your tuition is going to be accurate. Listen to yourselves. Listen to that intuition. Listen to your gut. The only reason that your gut is not right is because so many other messages have gotten in the way of you listening to yourself. So listen to that gut, trust it, because there's something there to it. I would much rather you trust your own gut than to trust what someone else is telling you to do when you've looked at that and seen it for what it is. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your night. If we're into nighttime, have a great day. If we're into morning time, and thank you so much for being here. This is awesome. I love doing these. I've actually discovered this is like probably my most favorite thing. Just talking to all of you and talking to everyone who needs me, not just the ones who only see me privately, but speaking to all of you so that everyone can get some empowerment juice and everyone can feel good about themselves and everyone can feel hope. I hope you take hope away from this. All right. Take care and I'll see you soon. Okay. Bye-bye. You're welcome. Bye. So welcome.